Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you.
Glad you could be on today. We're going to go into your story about your journey, and we went through a little bit of numbers game about how many shops you're signing on a 10th. You've got a 9th opening soon. Ton of stuff going on for you, but you start out in medical sales, and then you moved into a pool service company.
Yep.
So start there.
I think that's when he came into our world, was right out of the pool business.
Yeah, which is, I love.
He was a hole digger.
The coincidence of circumstance of where you were at that time and what happened. So walk us through how you went into that.
So what happened was I had the pool business, and it was about 3 years in, maybe 2.5 at the time. Sort of lost a little interest, and it wasn't stimulating me like I wanted to. And then I had one of the vehicles for the pool business at a repair shop, and it was there for a day. And I finally was like, all right, what's going on? And he goes, listen, I've looked at it for 4 hours. There's nothing I can do. I don't want to charge you for this. And I'm like, you had it for 4 hours. I got to pay you something. So he wouldn't give me any money. And there were cars everywhere. They run, your typical shop. Finally, he said, hey, can you get me, this special coffee at Publix? And I'm like, dude, I'd rather just give you money. And so I kind of left that. I took the car home, or the truck home.
And he wanted coffee?
Yeah, he wanted a special coffee from Publix. Like, he was making me do work. I was like, dude, I just want to give you money.
You ever taken coffee for a job?
Yeah.
No, it'd be like somebody going, can I bring you a rooster?
Yeah, it was so strange.
You go get me a rotisserie chicken for Publix.
Feed my family.
That's right.
Did we go back 100 years?
I was just so confused, and I was like, I just want to give you money for your time.
Yeah.
So I see cars everywhere, and I'm like, man, you know what? I could do something to this. And then, I went back to one of my old memories when I was in the medical sales, and I remembered all the successful pharmacies were run by non-pharmacists. So it kind of clicked. I'm like, you know what? I bet a non-technician could run a shop.
Non-pharmacist.
I saw your brain spin. I
love
love that.
I'm paying attention.
So that's where my idea started for getting an auto repair. And then I called some shops around. I found a shop for like $100,000. And that's when I called Eric. That was the first time I called Eric.
So we got to hit pause.
Okay.
So I got this client named Eric. We're working with Eric, and he'll tell you, in Shop Fix, 90% of partnerships do not work. Eric goes, hey, I got this guy. You're going to love him. And I'm like, no, dude, Eric, 90%. Don't do it. He's like, dude, you just got to talk to him. I really think this will be smart for me. He's like a business guy. What does he do? He's like, he digs pools for a living, I guess, or something. But he's really good with the numbers, all the stuff I hate. He's like, I like the cars. I like that, everything else. And from this outside looking in, that sounds all great, but my experience with all these business owners were, holy crap, this is a horrible idea. Horrible. Ends up being probably the most amazing idea for both of them. But at the time, I did not know Mike. I only knew Eric. So teeing your...
I don't hold it against him.
So, yes, teeing your story back up.
Eric's coming back going, man, I don't know.
Yeah, this is going to be rough.
Mike?
So here we are. Did you have a relationship with Eric, or...
So that's a funny story too.
Okay.
I can give you that one hopefully real quick.
Yeah.
So I called Eric, and Eric, to this day, he goes, I don't know why I answered the phone, because our relationship was a little bit so-so up to that point. And I'll tell you why. I'll explain why. So I called him, and he answered the phone. He goes, sure, let's go look at the shop. We go look at the shop. We start having conversations. And I'll finish that part. But I don't know if you know this part, that Eric and I played on the same softball team together. Our daughters did.
Oh.
And I was the coach. He didn't like my coaching.
Oh.
So our first relationship started with him trying to get me kicked off the softball team, coaching my kid.
Oh. Wow. Kid sports is polarizing.
But then, to fast forward,
and I could see Eric being one of those pissed off dads.
Yeah, and listen, to his defense, I acknowledge I wasn't the best coach. I was just a dad trying to coach kids. Eric actually came on, coached the kids. We ended up getting along after that. But we still laugh about it today, that our relationship started with him trying to kick me off my own daughter's softball team.
I think it's hilarious.
So that's why he says to this day, I don't know why I answered the phone, because it's not like we had this great relationship even after that.
He didn't like you. It probably said Mike Defato, worst coach ever. EVAR.
So we answered the phone. We went and looked at the shop. And then
did you actually premise it with, hey, I want to buy a piece of your shop?
No, the whole thing started with, I found a shop that I was going to buy. And I said, do you want to go see the shop with me? Give me some advice, go look at it. And then he goes, do you want to buy it together? Or one of us did. I don't remember exactly how it went.
Oh.
So the first shop was that one shop we bought together. And that's where it started. The guy wanted like 120 grand. We offered him 50, he took it.
Gotcha.
So that was remember that was the one you called
We
us
told
on?
you not to buy.
Yeah. Yes.
So we're 2 for 2.
Hey, I was right on that one though.
You are, yeah.
He dumped that one later.
Okay. We did.
So I was wrong on the partner, but I was right about the shop.
50-50, fair.
So then we had that shop for a while, and Eric said, partner on. That's when we partnered on the other one, and that's when things started on the Prestige itself.
So you both bought store 2 together. He still owned one by himself.
Correct.
And then when that started winding down, that wasn't the right move. You went and bought a piece of store 1.
Well, no, we had them together both for a while.
Oh,
you
did?
For like 2 years.
Did you buy initially in the store 1?
No. See, we started with my store 1, his store 2 together.
Okay.
And then eventually he brought me into his main store.
Once he saw you were up to snuff.
Yeah, and I think there was, he felt a conflict of interest. There were a lot of variables.
Oh, yeah. You both had to be in it to win it. So what about the pool business? You shut that down? Or?
No, so I still have it to this day. I'm finally selling off my final shares to somebody, but I brought in a guy who took it over for me.
See, those guys make a bunch of money.
So remember, mine's just pool service and repair. I don't do the pool building.
Oh.
But the repair, I wouldn't say a bunch, but you can make a decent living, but it's an owner-operator business that can't scale. That's why I just knew I couldn't scale it to what you can in an auto. And,
Gotcha.
and you can, but it's exponentially harder than it is auto. The pool, you can make a few $100,000, so it's perfect for a guy who likes to have his freedom of life, and that's who I gave it to, was a guy who he had to take it over. I slowly have been selling him shares to get him to take it. It's like, it was actually just something I was doing for somebody ultimately when it was all said and done, because I wanted to get rid of it. And I was just helping this guy kind of grow as a business person. So it was more of a mentorship thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've always wondered, because those guys, they're famous for digging the hole, taking a deposit, and not coming back.
Oh, yeah. The last person that redid my pool cost me a little bit.
Understood. All right, I think, Jay, you were going to ask him another question there.
Well, no,
I probably distracted you.
From the pool business, getting into, you called him up about getting a shop, but how did you even decide that you even want to do that, right? Oh, we went into that. The truck.
So the truck was the main reason. It's just, I just saw an opportunity, and I was like, I just think I can do it. I don't know why. I had a bad experience. I'm just going to try this myself. I mean, it was almost that much of a, and mind you, I had spent a lot of time looking at a lot of different businesses in the past.
You've been a serial entrepreneur.
Yes. I mean, I flipped about 20 something homes at one point.
But you've never gotten one where you just stuck with it for a long time.
Correct.
And what made auto repair so attractive that you're like, this is the one?
So when I first started in it, I wasn't sure. I saw the opportunity, but it came down to actually when we started the coaching and the turnkey of it, where I spent 3 years in the pool business trying to figure out the model, and I figured it out after 3 years.
Yeah.
And I knew it couldn't scale, but what I realized here was I had the cheat code with the shop fix, and I just spent a year just implementing what you did and just learn. And I didn't have to spend the time figuring it out. I could just go become a business person instead of trying to figure out the one-on-one stuff. And that's what clicked for me, is that there aren't many coaching companies that actually do it right. So when I saw that is when I was like, green light.
Green light.
The first year I learned a business, I needed to learn about auto repair. The second year was about building the model and really understanding it. And then it was just about building the confidence. And then that's when it took us a little bit longer than I wanted, because COVID put a little delay. But the second I had enough time, the green light went, and we just went nuts, because I built the foundation, but I saw it. I saw what ShopFix was doing, and it made it so easy, the decision.
Totally makes sense.
Well, and we kind of jumped into this, but what time frame wise, when was this? When did this all kind of happen? When did this layout?
Year, physical years?
Yeah.
So 15 was the pool business. 18 is when we joined ShopFix. The thing with Eric started at the end of 17.
Yeah.
And then, so I spent from 18, 19, where I really started to figure stuff out. 20, we really took off, my confidence level. And 21 is when I really, really started looking for more shops. And 22 is when we went from 1 to 6 in 9 to 10 months. And then
1 to 6.
And then, yeah.
We don't all.
Is that above the average?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, I had Eric, so it is, to me, when you have 2 people, you could do more.
Yeah.
And then,
True.
And then when we brought on the 4th, was it the 4th or the 5th was the boat shop? When we brought that one on, then we brought Kristen, and with 3 of us, it's we have a powerhouse to do more.
How did y'all decide that he was your next piece?
The boat shop.
How so?
When we first started, because he knows that industry and we didn't.
But even then, how'd you go? We trust this guy. We know that he'll do his share of the work, etc. You'd all three been on your own. What made? I mean, now all of a sudden it's this trifecta.
Right. So I would say we knew, and Eric's had a lot of conversations with him in the past. We knew his business acumen from the past. We were all like-minded, same age, same goals. Is there a risk in it? For sure. Right. We didn't know 100%, but we had very similar strategic goals. It's not like one of us was 30 or one of us was, retiring. We're all like, that was a huge part of it is our energy levels were the same. Our desires were the same, and so it just made sense to do it. I don't know if that answers it.
Yeah, no, it helps a bunch. I always am curious what draws people into a partnership or even out,
Right.
So it's very, very interesting. And I'm sure it's had its challenges, but you are blowing and going.
Healthy challenges. I mean, the thing about it is that we're all, like Eric and I, we went through our bumps and then we learned how to communicate just like a spouse. We always joke that Eric's my second wife.
Yeah.
And my wife even jokes, "Where's your wife?" Like, it's like, it is what it is,
Yep.
But it's true. And we had, I don't want to use even differences. We had our moments and we always went through them and came out stronger. And the same thing with Chris is like, we're very open with each other and we will have the tough conversation. I would literally call him and be like, "Listen, we got to get this on the table. Let's put it out there, get through it, move on."
Yeah. Good stuff.
So you said a boat shop.
Yeah.
I don't want to skip over that.
Yeah.
So
It's
boat
got to be just like auto
boat
repair,
sales, right? Like what kind of boat shop are we talking about?
That story kind of started the same thing as auto. So when we
were just like working in business.
Yeah. that one came about. Eric and I were doing our planning for the ARPs. We were getting them all started, the new stores, and we're like, and we had the whole thing, and we're like, well, if we can do auto, why can't we do boat? It's the same thing. It's repair.
Yeah.
And I told him the same story. Took my boat to a boat shop, had a bad experience. I was like, I think we can do it. Why not? We could do auto.
Yep.
So funny enough, we left that session. We actually went to the Keys to do we were like, get away from everything, do the planning. We're driving back. We're like, man, we could do this, and we're driving. It's like, just like that one. We pass this boat shop. We point at it. We get back home. It's actually for sale.
Wow.
Wow.
And we were just like, I called the broker and we had an offer within a week.
Wow.
So
tell us the challenges of that.
So I would say the challenges with the boat repair, the biggest one is there's a couple. The industry does not have the training that auto repair has because the dealerships and the repair shops, they're all mom and pop. So the dealers are all no different than our auto repair shops. So the technicians aren't getting proper training. So there's no industry standards. They're all DIYers.
Wow.
Very. When I say all, I'm just saying it's a very limited scope of highly professional technicians. And the industry is a small fraction of what auto is on top of that. So you have a double whammy. But the biggest part I noticed is the lack of training. So you end up, your pool of talent is just so much less. Then the other variable that we didn't see is, I think this is Chris had the best line. The boat industry is in 1991 and they don't want it to be 1992.
They don't want it to be 1992.
Chris said that one time and I'm like, holy crap, you're right.
It is behind the times, bro.
But it's so much worse.
They have, everything's so much simpler and they make it so complicated. You're like, dude, this is nothing.
Is it because there's just not that much volume in the, and like, is there no pressure for them?
No, it's so if you think about it, all the dealerships do all this. They have a much bigger training and there's much that goes on versus the boat world. They're not spending the time to do that. They're just figuring it out and they're all owner operators.
Well, and the boat world is super calm. Nothing's going on to all of a sudden crazy. Your hair's on fire. So they use the off season as like, oh, we got to rest. And then all of a sudden they're like killing it, crushing themselves.
Well, that's in seasons, not in Florida.
Well, that's true. Up in
we
for
don't
us.
Have that.
Yeah, we forgot. You're in Florida.
We go year round.
That.
So
they're just slow all the time. Not in a hurry.
You cannot beat time ever. Flat rate is non-existent. It's almost impossible to implement because if you're lucky to get 50% efficiency, you're killing it. It's terrible.
Because the techs are so bad or because the work is so hard?
Both.
Wow.
It's both. So then we had the other epiphany about the other issue with the boat world is that, so in auto, if you have a BMW come in, water pump, whatever it might be, right, they repeat it. They know the job over and over again.
Yeah.
You bring a boat in, every boat is one of one.
What do you mean?
Jobs aren't often enough.
Yes, and there's like the electrical issues are different because they put in this, the Simrad or the Garmin connected with a different motor, and they ran it differently.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Everything's in a different spot. Everybody does it different. It's all custom.
Yep.
And so that creates
There's no
time.
standards like there are in
Correct.
cars. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
No OBD2.
Reading is constant issues, and that's the high level of talent that they don't have to be able to get by. So that's some of the hurdles. Is just we just were like, okay, and the Road Less Stupid book, we asked every single question possible, and we whiffed on a few of the big questions that we didn't see in that.
Like what?
Like what I just told you, the talent, the way the boats come in, that they're not, you don't find the repeating jobs, you don't beat time, the industry not wanting to grow up and mature. The software is horrible. Like we got to the point now we're using a software that cost us a fortune to use, and it was antiquated as all could be. We finally gave up on it and just switched to TechMetric and are like using like VIN number instead of whole number, or we adopted it just because we just can't operate with that system anymore.
Wow. So, I'm sure you've learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to go open more boat shops?
Absolutely not. So I'll tell you, we and Chris has said it many a time, is we have really, really come to appreciate auto repair.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
It's the same with heavy duty diesel. Very little of it is in the internet. They still use parts, manuals, and books and phone calling to find out what's in stock.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain segments of the RV industry. There's a lot of segments of just the repair world that, because there's not enough volume, they're just in 1991, as you said it. But there's advantages there. There's also an opportunity. I mean, if we wanted to open up an RV shop, we all could. Not that we want to, but I mean, who wants to work on toilets one minute and a catalytic converter the next and an airbag, right after that? But there's no lack of business in those industries, but they come with their challenges.
Yeah.
You got to be able to push through them.
Yep.
Man.
So going back, we have a lot of like jumping back with yours, but because you're going over some really big stuff. So was it, you said 6 shops in 9 months?
12 months.
Right? 12 months?
It's probably more like 12. And then we added the other 3 the next 6 or so months after that.
So I have a whole ton of questions about how you grew that.
They hate
fast.
living life.
How'd you grow your bench? And how did you keep people
money?
You guys just have been just no time.
They hate money too.
No,
Or if you had time, tell me how you did that.
So that was kind of what we were talking about before in the beginning. Was I always feel I've been very good about, I don't know what the word is, farming my time, making more of it by just continually to grow the people around. Now, granted, remember there are 3 of us.
Yeah.
That helps a lot, and that allowed me conceptually to say, "Hey, guys, I think we could do this." I do know when we got to 6, we're like, "Hey, maybe pump it a little here," and then we added the 3, and we're like, "Hey, let's pump it a little here." But what we kept doing was just adding our corporate office, the right pieces that helped us exponentially grow. So at certain points, like I would run the corporate team, and I had Chris and Eric in the stores, so that way I could focus on those types of things, and we just tag teamed the whole thing through it. I never felt, I don't think any of us ever felt extremely, extremely overwhelmed through any of it. It was very strategic how we did a lot of it. We felt good about it. Did we have our hurdles? Sure. In the beginning, did we hire some poor people? Absolutely. Your first store after your main store has growth issues. Like we screwed up a lot of things, learned from them really quick. And you said it best this morning was, I think the biggest difference between, a lot of, whether it's the clients versus coaches, is how we pivot really quickly. We're going to screw up just like everybody else. It's what we do at that moment in time, and it's the pivoting time. So the second something goes, we're like, well, we screwed that up, pivot, go.
The best operators fix it now.
Fix it now right away. And we fire really fast now, and we hire very strategically.
Yeah.
And so, we went from, just the 3 of us at the stores, and then we hired I call her an HR recruiter in the beginning. And then we went on. I was like, I realized the recruiting was taking too much time, and she was getting overwhelmed with all the HR piece. So then we went and hired a full-time recruiter, like a legit recruiter. I was like, well, we need some more than that. So then we hired somebody to run all our shops just recently, and that's been absolutely game-changing, because one of the things, and I said at my tribe time today, was, believe it or not, as good as an entrepreneur and business owner we are, we're actually not very good operators. There are
It's
people.
a different skill set.
It's a different skill set. And what I recognized when I started interviewing more and more is I found a real operator who ran 40 stores for a large chain. The conversation was completely different. I knew everything he said I agreed with. I wasn't the leader like he was. The way he leads the stores is completely different than I do, or Chris or Eric.
It is a mindset. It's funny how that when they start talking and they automatically process to different things you wouldn't get to normally.
Yep. And it's just what I realized is like, I know what needs to get done, but this guy, it's what he does on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But for us, it's like this is a lot of effort for us to be these types of leaders. It's not a natural skill.
They're doers.
They're completely, and that's the way they get it done. And as unemotional I am, I'm still too emotional about letting people go.
An operator fires 2 people before breakfast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So this guy came in, no joke, he hired 17 people in his first 60 days.
Wow.
Completely restaffed the stores like this.
Man. Well, and the other thing that they see, I think a lot of times you think of things you're wanting to get done. Their mind goes to, how do I create a system that somebody else can follow once that thing's done?
Yep.
That's hard to train people.
Yep.
A lot of times they have to have that mindset of, what's the structure I'm going to put in place when I do this thing so I can walk away from it and 5 people can do it.
And that's what he's told us. He's just like, I got to get these set. We hired him to basically run the operation, but we know we need to get DMs in. He's got to get it to where he's basically being the DM till he can get the right team to put the DM on top of him. So then, and I told him once he proves the model, I'll add stores as fast as you want. I just told him, I was like, I got to see how long it takes you to launch a store. So he's got 2 stores we're launching at the same time. And I told him, it was like, if you can get it launched in 90 days, I'll get you a store every 90 days. He's like, I got to know the timeline and how fast you can do it. But that's how fast he's moving in a way that we couldn't.
Yeah. I think that you've hit on so much here, but one thing I want to highlight is when you move very quickly and you open up new stores, which create new challenges. And as those challenges arise, if you don't have the skill set to rise to those challenges, you quickly discover your deficiencies and what's going on. And you said something very impactful. You said, we really focused on getting our corporate team and the support done. I was talking to some clients the other day, and they said, what are the number one things we need to do if we're going to get ourselves set up for growth? And I said, I'll tell you what I did. Hire a recruiter above store 4, store 5, somewhere around there. You don't need one till then, but about then you're going to need one, which you did. And then all of your resources dump into your corporate office. People think that's crazy. They don't understand that the corporate office, it's like a mushroom cloud, like this explosion. It overflows and takes care of everything else. So if you've got enough staff that can fill in, if you fire somebody, you don't even feel it.
No.
If you've got, like my brother said the other day, he said, I'll never run a store without a 3-man front again.
Which is funny.
And because every time you had a 2-man front, if it dropped to 1, you're having to pull somebody from corporate to go help fill in that store because the store's so busy. And so we just had to decide we are not going to be a company that runs small stores. So all of our stores have to be big. So if all of our stores have to be big and we need that average to be north of 200,000 in every location, that means a store that's brand new that opens up at 50,000 on its first month is going to be a 3-man front. So that on its 3rd month, it's at 120. Its 4th month, it's at 170. And its 5th month, it's at 200. We're staffing for where we want to go, which also means we have to market for where we want to go. But we can only do that if we have a corporate staff that's able to rush a location, open up the account for the water company, the cable company, the vendors, everything, and they tag team it, knock it out, get it open off the ground. Otherwise, that whole load falls on the rest of the staff. And so many people haven't done what you did just now, which was beef up the corporate office. They look at it and they go, oh, man, it's going to add so much overhead. And it does. It absolutely is non-producing overhead. However, it is a production in the way that it allows you to open new locations quickly. And one store's profits could pay for everybody in your corporate office if you could get it done fast enough.
So I'll touch on 2 things there. One is what most people don't realize is if they don't cash flow their main stores initially to support this, it's a nightmare. So our main 2 stores are cash flowing over 1.7. That can cover up a lot of things. That's a hell of a Band-Aid to have that type of money coming in each year. The Band-Aid stores that in the first year don't make any money, potentially. Right? Plus your cost to launch them. So we knew right away, part of my strategy was this, we had discussed is we have to have the cash to be able to support. And then we got to 6 stores really fast to justify the team to be able to spread the costs. Because I knew at 3 to 4, if I went too slow, I won't hire the staff. If I do the 6, I get the staff in and then we can pump them.
Oh, interesting.
Because then you spread them over the 6. So say you have, 300,000-400,000 really quick. The spread over that over 6 is a hell of a lot easier than taking over 3 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So the store was the answer to you growing the corporate office.
That's why when I do it, everybody, but I was like, there was a reason we wanted to go really fast. Now, granted, listen, part of it is you have to have the capital to start, then you have to have the cash to support. You can't do it, you can't do it without one or the other. If you're going in there and you only have 200 to 300 coming out of your first store, you're not going to survive. You're not going to want to do that. But we knew the launching pad.
You were sacrificing profits today for massive profits on the backside.
Because you can go that much faster.
Yes.
So that was a lot to do with it. Like, we didn't just come up with 6 out of nowhere. This was a slow build to this, and part of it happened because I did a lot of like shop searching, and they all just started snowballing and falling in my lap.
You know the feeling.
Yep. And we were acquiring, like, I found kind of our model is to either do new starts or stores that are 50 grand or less. So I'm only acquiring them for $100, $150 with pretty good leases, because then we'll just take them and we flip them overnight. The guys aren't doing much sales anyway. They don't have to deal with unwinding all the crap in the store from.
So you're not even buying real estate. You're just getting the leases and moving on.
So we decided to do, we did have a bunch of property. We've already redid it back. We're right now we're just leasing.
Let's go slow for people who don't know that.
Okay.
You said we had a bunch of property. We redid it back. So that's what's called, for everybody who doesn't know, a sale lease back. Yeah. So you sold the property to an investment firm who then signs a lease back to you for 20 years or longer, depending on what you negotiate. And that allows you to get cash out of your property and have no debt on the business.
Correct.
And so you did that with some of your properties.
Yep. So we've done that with 4, and we're looking at the 5th. We take the cash. For one, the way I look at it is that it's all about cash flow and then having the cash to support. So we're either just signing leases, or anything that we had, we bought and leased it back because it paid for the renovation. Plus we got some cash out to go get the next one.
And that's how I grew all mine.
Yeah. So
I got to 5 or 6 locations without owning a single property much quicker. And people would say, Aaron, that's crazy. But what they don't understand is, if you put $300,000 down on every building you buy, you have no money left to remodel with, no money left to buy equipment. Before you know it, now a new store opening $600,000-$700,000. So it slows your pace of growth way down. I was able to grow rapidly, then turn around after the fact and go back and buy locations much quicker than one person who buys each one.
Yep.
That's why all these chains always lease. Panera leases. You were talking about them earlier.
Yeah.
Chipotle, all of them lease their properties. Panda, well, they don't buy those properties. Except Chick-fil-A. But Chick-fil-A is a whole other animal.
We're not going to get into that.
We're not going to get into Chick-fil-A right now.
Yeah, so I mean, that's how I feel like we can. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep leasing.
Yeah.
Or doing the sale lease back until we hit a point where we have too much cash, and then we'll start buying.
Yeah.
Because we do want to be landlords eventually, and we want to own real estate.
So that's my question. Is the plan just to, are you ever going to sell this thing, or is your goal to grow this into a family business and hopefully your kids get in, or what?
That conversation is so fluid that right now it's just about the accomplishment, and we're all just driven. We're young.
Yeah.
So 10 to 15 years down the road, I don't know. The intent is more about building a business and a brand, doing it with my partners, the self-satisfaction of it. Because the thing is that I told them multiple times, if we sell, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I don't like being bored.
You have to go fix the pool industry and the boating industry.
Yeah, I'm not a healthy person when I'm bored.
Yeah.
Well, not just that. You go and you sell. What are you going to do? You're going to go invest the money into something else that's going to pay you a fraction of what you've been getting paid.
Yep.
And you're going to have nothing to do, as you pointed out. But let's be real. As you grow this company, you can hire managers to do what you're even doing.
100%.
And just keep the asset and just keep collecting the check.
Well, I joked it was maybe been 6 months to a year ago. I looked at Chris and Eric and I said, I put him in his DMs and I was doing this. And I said, guys, you understand that my goal is to fire all of us.
Amen.
That's the goal. Is that the goal is to replace all of us, because I want to be a part of it, but I want to be on the board. I want to be driving the direction. I want to be an entrepreneur, but to run it every day, that we're going to fire ourselves. Yeah. That's the plan.
Yeah.
It's a good plan.
Well, you sound like you're very much into the data of things. We've talked about that a little bit. So tell me a little bit about that. Why are you so into the data of the business? So,
part of it is just my natural inclination to analytics.
Yeah.
I do have a thirst to know, and I don't like to base things off of feelings. I don't know when that happened. It's just how I am naturally. I don't want to make decisions off feelings because there's no data behind it. There's no facts. There's no reason to make it, and shop owners, like, my guys would come in and talk about this and that. And, we've had all these incidents where like, we have to do this. And I'm like, what is it based off of? He's like, well, this customer last week, I'm like, the one? So we're going to change the whole model over this or that. And then I would always bring the data to them. And, it's always either onesies, twosies, and they want to make business decisions off of something that isn't really there. So as a whole, even before all this, it was just how I am, just very analytical. And it just helps keep everything just on the straight and narrow. I don't have to there's not much discussion when you're just going by the data.
Yeah.
And so if I ever have issues, I say, let me see what the data tells me. And I go in there blind. And where it started was when I was in medical. I'll give you the quick background of what really sparked my analytical mind was I was tasked with figuring out what was going on in the distribution channel at the pharmacies. And they gave me over 1 million lines of data. And they said, I need you to give me a 1-page report on what this is telling us. And you have to go into it without knowing what it's going to tell you. And so you start doing a bunch of different things, and there's decile reports, the Pareto rule. You start doing all these different analytics, and I let the data tell me what it's going to tell me. And what it did tell me was, at that time, my big uncovery, and actually I've talked about this in marketing, is that the sales in the business were going like this, and everything was fine. But then the business started going down. And the problem was they were losing customers faster than they were gaining in the past. And so the growth rate of the stopped because of the churn effect, which happens in auto shops too. You don't acquire enough new customers to make up for your lost existing, right?
Yes.
You go into a decline. So that happened. That I remember doing that. It took me 2 weeks to do that. And I remember being lost and spinning my wheels. And I went to my boss one day and she goes, tell me of the data, what is the story? What's the soundbite? When you come to somebody, what's the story that it's telling you? And I was like, I never thought of it like that. That data is a story. There's a story within all data. And when she told me that, that's when the light bulb clicked about, now every time I look at data, I look at it and say, what's the story? What's the soundbite? When I tell somebody how's it going to register? So then my mind clicked on how I build everything is around what is the story behind the data.
So how does that play out in shops for you?
I mean, all the time. I can literally go into OctaRocket and in minutes tell exactly what's going on in a shop. And 80% of the time, it's always around the advisor-tech relationship, almost all the time. There's other variables, but it's either a tech not giving good quotes, an advisor rushing through tickets, an advisor selling from their pocket. And you can literally just see the correlation, right? If I see this advisor doing this and this advisor doing that, you could sell out of the pocket. I see both advisors doing the same thing, and then I see a tech with a low close ratio. Advisors don't have confidence in that tech. You just see all these little things that tie together, and you can see it in 2 seconds. I could tell when there's a GS. I could tell when a tech's checked out. I mean, it's super easy.
How do you tell them? Somebody's listening. They're going, what numbers might should I look at to find out if a tech is checked out?
So one is you can look over the history if they were doing okay and then they fell off. That's one easy way. That one could be, you have to ask questions on some of these to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're always this consistent pattern, they are who they are. But if they go through waves, like I had one tech, he had his $1,000 quote, it was $500. He started getting lazy, and I talked to the shop. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, he's just quoting a bunch of fluid stuff. His close ratio dropped by 30%. And they're like, yeah, his attitude's bad. He's mentally checked out. But I had to ask the question, but I knew where it was going one way or another.
Interesting. So the data doesn't lie.
It doesn't. And now, granted, a lot of times it'll spark questions, but sometimes I know the answer right away. Because I'll be on with a client, and I was telling the story, like she went from 200 to 170 in sales, and she goes, we're super slow. I'm like, okay, so let's look. And I started looking, and I'm like, something doesn't add up. So I looked at their car count the last 3 months. It was identical. Their writer got overwhelmed, started burning through cars. They had 2 lower C techs giving crummy quotes, so she didn't have the time to push back on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just told her, I was like, you got to have 3 A techs. You don't need two A, B, and 2 Cs. Just go get another A or a B, have all quality stuff. You still need another writer, but at least you won't burn through them until you find them.
Yeah.
But she doesn't have the time to send them back. There's no time. But I was like, you're not slow. It's not your marketing.
Well, and they're only down 15%.
Right.
It's funny how people will go 5% down. Oh my gosh. It's the end of the world.
But when your car count's the same and they say that, I was like, how did you not know your car count was identical? And they go by feel.
Yeah.
Because they felt slow.
Yep. And a lot of times, slow means how much work rolled from last week to this week.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge difference. So people might be listening going, dang, this guy's a baller. What kind of advice would you give somebody who, maybe they're on their own, maybe they got a partner, but they're trying to get going and they don't have a history in auto repair? How would you coach? You just met me and I'm like, hey man, how do I get into it and do what you're doing? I have an interest in auto repair, but I don't have the experience. You didn't have the experience. How'd you do it? What would you tell them?
So if you're talking about like starting a shop from scratch,
or buying into one, it doesn't matter. But what would you tell somebody who is like you a few years back?
So I would say the biggest hurdle I had was just the mental hurdle of the fear of being at a shop and my techs can't do the job and I can't do it. So that's where Eric was huge. My confidence level to go into it, to have somebody like him. That first year, he had to do a lot in the shop because there was a lot of bumps. I mean, he had a lot of work. Maybe even 2 years he was in the shop. I don't think it was till probably year 3 where he was fully able to get out of ever having to work on a car. Now, it diminished significantly over time, but there were bumps in the road. So I can say, depending on what your confidence level of the team, whether to make that jump, I didn't have it. I definitely had confidence issues the first few years. I never felt, in full transparency, I never felt like I was really part of the industry for a while.
Like you were one of us.
Yeah, I did not. And it was
the auto industry.
It was a mental hurdle for me, not being a person that came from it, never working on cars, having no background. But that was my own mental thing, because I'll say it to people and they'll look at me like I'm crazy. But, when you hang around people and they're talking auto and their background, and I had zero. I never walked into a shop and under a lift till 2018. So it was actually scary to walk. I still don't even like doing it. Like when I walk under, you'll see me kind of go really fast. So that being said, that is probably the biggest thing, is the confidence of knowing that you have somebody to fix the car in the beginning.
Yeah.
Now, today I don't have that issue because I can get the talent. I can do that. I don't have to call on Eric or Chris to go do something in a store like that anymore. But in the beginning, that was my biggest hurdle for sure. I would not be in the industry if Eric hadn't done it with me.
Wow. So he was a big key point.
Absolutely. There's just no question that I would have not. Could I have contemplated the other one, but I would have failed. Eric got us through a lot of hurdles in the beginning that there's no way we would have got through.
It's interesting hearing your perspective and how you came to these conclusions, and why you believe what you believe and how you're going to go about it. I love how methodical you've been with it, and how you said, okay, we're going to do it this way, this way, and this way. And how you were also like, I need this guy. He's going to be my anchor through these tough times. And you just, without feeling and emotion, just said, this is how we're going to do it. So I think a lot of people need to hear that, because a lot of us are still, running our company from our bank account, not from our P&L, running our company from a place of emotion and fear, not from analytics and data that says your car count's the same. It's your average ticket that's off, and you are the one affecting that. And so I think there's a lot of people that need to hear that. I think that's huge. Now, let's catch everybody up. You've got now how many stores? 9?
So our 9th is finishing the renovation. Should be up and going within 30 days.
Okay.
The 10th, I'm expecting a lease to sign within the next week or so.
Okay.
Which I should touch on this real quick too, when it comes to expansion. I think people underestimate the amount of conversations it takes to truly expand with people that get you into the new shops.
Oh, one deal can take months.
Well, but it's not only that, it's the number of conversations it takes just to get the one deal to take months to get done.
Oh yeah. It's a lot of back and forth on the phone in the negotiations. Then, maybe the city has an issue with it. You're dealing with the city, the codes department, everything, the charge accounts, the vendor accounts, the hiring, the recruiting.
Yeah. And I tell people, I was like, they're like struggling to get a deal. I was like, how many NDAs have you signed and how many LOIs have you signed? And they'll be like 3. I'm like, okay, come back to me when you sign 50 NDAs.
Yeah.
That's probably the sales side, your background in sales, knowing in order to close, you got to have a higher number.
It's a volume game.
It's not about getting those in there that you need.
Well, and then what happens is they start snowballing. The brokers start coming back to you. They see you're easy to close with. So this lease is coming about because we were easy to deal with on a prior property. We did a lease with him, and he's like, I want you guys as tenants. So he came to me and gave me another building.
And you pay rent.
Yeah. He's like,
a lot of tenants, we don't realize this. How many tenants don't pay rent or don't pay it on time?
I know. That's why
so many.
So I've had two deals that took place where they took less money to have me in because they knew I'd pay.
That's it, man.
They didn't even go to the market. They didn't take it to the market. They turned down a Midas for us.
Yep.
Wow.
But they want, just to your point, they just want to know one thing.
Yeah.
That they're not going to get a phone call. And they're not going to have to go collect. They don't want to hear phone calls and they don't want to collect.
No. I mean, but that's the beauty of being a landlord, right? You want passive mailbox money. Well, the moment they have to hassle you, it's not mailbox money anymore. It's an active business, which is exactly the opposite of what they signed up for.
Yep. And both these, like the one that was great. Oh, this is a funny one. We go in negotiations with this guy. We wanted 280 grand at one point. We get him down to 150. He keeps fighting. He finally says, you know what? I'm just going to keep it. So we lose the deal. 60 days later, I get a call from the broker. Hey, the shop's on the market. You want it? I'm like, yeah, how much? She goes, just sign the lease. They kicked him out.
Ooh, he was behind on the rent. Wow. Yeah, I've seen exactly what you're talking about. That guy rode his ego into the grave.
Yep.
Who knows how many months behind he was.
I know. And you know what was happening at the end of the negotiation? He wouldn't let go of a certain price, and I realized he needed to get it to be able to pay the rent. It had nothing to do with the negotiation of the price. He needed the money to be able to pay.
And you know what? Had he taken a lower number from you, he probably could have called them up, offered him a number, settled, walked away without getting a lawsuit. Now he's probably fighting all kinds of stuff in court, and you're renting it for nothing.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I want to pivot just a little bit, because you mentioned to me earlier about ROI per hour and the value of time, which I thought was a really good concept of talking about and prioritizing, because time is, we only have so much of it. So talk to us a little bit about that. What has that been for you?
Yeah. So I think, in the beginning, because I don't want everybody when they're listening to get lost in the fact that it happens from day one, is you do start with you're making less in the beginning for your time, because you have to, like for me, I had to learn the business. I had to invest a lot of time. I was in the shop a lot. And then what happens is over time, you start to slowly replace yourself in whatever it was. So I remember in the beginning, I would have to go to the shop for 5 days, then I would cut it to 4 and cut it to 3, and I would methodically cut back to see if the shop would break. So that was kind of like I would start pulling myself back, and then I was able to do other things with that time, whether it was growth in other areas, whatever. But I slowly was able to pull back in that specific, what I call that trade 1-for-1 on time. And then as you start growing, you start investing in, I started being able to talk more deals and things that were higher level, right? So I was able to go out and work deals, which the hard part for a lot of people is there's a lot of activities that take place that don't feel like they make you money in the moment because they're very long and whiteboard. Like you have a lot of whiteboards here. Like whiteboard time is hard for people because there isn't an immediate return on it. And that's where a lot of technicians struggle, because they want to just go fix something, be done, fix, broken stuff. And that's really hard, because when you get into the white space, that return on time is bigger, but takes a lot longer.
Very much.
Right. So the 2 years I spent getting ready, doing all the things, and Eric and I spent a lot of time, and even Chris now and the other ones, we spend a ton of time that doesn't come to fruition for months. So it doesn't have that right feel to it. So you can't measure it. The hard part with the ROI and time is you're not going to be able to measure it within a very contained period. It's going to be over time, like a big period of time. So the reading of books that people do and the investment in relationships and the conversations they're not as measurable, but then they explode.
They're
so
exponential.
like the time I spent with this one broker, for example, he was a complete, jerk. Now I became best friends with him. He's brought me the Goodyear deal. That time I spent negotiating that deal brought me actually 2 shops. But it was a lot of work to deal with that guy. He was horrible with negotiations on the lease and things like that. So I'm kind of throwing these random topics out because the ROI and time can't be measured as definitively as people want, and they struggle with that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting. You said, as you looked at the number of days you were in your shop, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you'd step back and see if it broke. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think some people might have a challenge doing that, but I'm functionally curious how you did that with your shops. Like, was that a communication thing you did with people, or is that a comfort level you had and then you just consciously did it but not tell them?
Yeah, consciously would just do it, and I would slowly just pull myself out, right? And Eric too. So we had a bunch of things, like he was doing the back, I was doing the front. We kind of just strategically started to pull out, because you can't find out what's broken if you're the constant Band-Aid. So we would do it slowly, because I didn't know enough, and I didn't want to do it immediately. Like I could do that at the new shops, but our first shop, I didn't know enough. So I had to watch and learn, and all my learning came from that. And then this is the hardest part. The hardest part is when you went back in and you knew it was broken, you can't fix it in that moment. You have to wait for your meeting with your manager to do the fix. Because if you fix it in the moment, they think you're micromanaging them.
Yep.
So
and the manager doesn't learn anything.
He doesn't learn anything. So here's a good story. I forgot about this one. So when we first started backing out and we got to that once a week, I still remember we had this R8 who was kicking our main tech's butt. And I said, Eric, we got to trust him. We got to, this failure time is an investment, right? The letting him fail is an investment. And he calls me one day and he's like, I'm going to go in and fix it. I'm like, no. I was like, you got to let him learn. He goes, freaking A, how long are we going to invest in these guys? And I was just, I'm like, just be, and he understood it now. And after we went through it, I was like, you got to let him fail because he will never take on that job. He should have never taken the job on. And he wasn't asking for the right help and doing the right things. But that lesson was valuable. And we let him suffer through it. Our instinct wants to go and fix it.
Yep.
Yeah. So I do remember that. That was really funny. That was one of my favorite stories, but I think it was it was a tough thing for me to put my foot in the ground, but it was because it was a great lesson for my guys and for Eric to see it. And I think he even tells me to this day, he's like, I didn't get it at the moment, but I do now, about this investment period in your team. You're not going to make as much as you can in the moment, but you will, because if you go back to the ROI in time, now you have people making money for you while you're not there, acting like you will.
That's exactly right. So a couple of you in this partnership have also dabbled with coaching now, and you're blowing and going. What in the world made you go, all right, I've learned a new industry. Now I'm going to go teach people about it. What made you decide to, we hear give back, we hear, remember those behind you and all this stuff. But what made you, coming from the pool industry, jumping in auto repair, growing this platform, say, man, I'm going to go talk to Joe Blow down the street or Mary who just bought a shop and help them make not near as many mistakes as I made? What made you to just decide to do that?
So a couple reasons. One is the giving back is there. That's a huge portion of it. I feel like what we got from being taught this, I don't want to say we owe it, but I feel like there's a certain debt to give back to people, especially if you believe you can help them. So that's one aspect. But then there's what do I get out of it, right? There's always like some reason for it. And there's twofold for me. One is I would like to stress my time. So by doing this, it put more pressure on me, because if I can't coach, that means I'm doing too much in the stores, which I'm not getting a good ROI on my time, right? So if I'm going to run 30, 40 shops, I need to stress my time more. And I also, if I can't manage 30 clients, I can't manage 30 shops. So I want to continually prove the model that if I can't coach them, how am I going to do it?
And that's exactly how you would run 30 shops you didn't know.
Correct. So, and then the last piece is you can't be hypocritical and coach. So if I tell them to do something, I got to do it myself.
Dude, it makes you such a better player out there on the field. Oh my gosh.
So those are my reasons. There's a lot of them. There's some that are giving back, and then there's some, if you want to call it selfish reasons or growing myself reasons.
Yeah.
So, but yes, it makes you a better operator. But for me as an MSO, I have a bigger motivation.
Yeah. It's easy because you guys have opened shops, and as you've grown and gotten larger and larger, you've continued to have such a big heart for the people that are wanting to grow and don't even conceptualize what you're exactly doing. Like they have no clue. They're a little 2-man operation. They're going, oh my gosh, look at what this guy's doing. And he's getting on the phone with me. That's a big deal. Like, it's a big deal that you believe they're worthy of that advice, right? And it's a big deal that a lot of shop owners think, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not the person you need to be talking to. You need to go talk to so-and-so. But if you do that enough, that shop owner goes, maybe I am worth something. Mm-hmm. Maybe there is something a little special about me. Maybe that's why Mike talks to me. And they slowly start to grasp it. So I think the clients that do have you are lucky and are blessed to get that perspective and get that advice from you, because it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. But it's super impressive what you've done, and super impressive that you've not forgotten the little guy along the way. So I want to commend you for that.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is I don't feel any different than I did 5 years ago. Other than I've matured as a person, I've grown as a person, but I don't feel like how people perceive me is not how I perceive myself.
Yeah, I think that's all of us.
I know, because you've said it before, and it started to hit me more and more. that I don't feel any different than I did when I started.
Yeah.
In that aspect.
Yeah. Wow. Mike, this has been great. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
We appreciate it, man. Very entertaining and funny. Tell Eric all you did was crack jokes at his expense. He'll be fine.
He knows. I've been at his expense many a time.
Hey, yeah, we'll get him on at some point, and we'll let him make fun of you the whole time.
He will. Oh, trust me. All right, I'll tell you one. This is how little I know about cars, and they do this to me all the time. We went to meet Jonathan at a shop. We're walking out, and it was me, Chris, Eric, and Jonathan. And Eric goes, "Hey, how much is an oil change on this car?" And it was Chris's Porsche. And I go, "I don't know, $800. It's a Porsche." And he goes, "You know that's an electric car." I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy.
I thought he was going to ask you about blinker fluid or something.
No, and he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
You teed it up.
Yeah, he teed it up, and I swung.
That's awesome.
And I whiffed.
Yep. That's good.
This has been a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
All right,
See you.
cool. Thank you.